The snow fell heavy over Brooklyn that Christmas Eve, covering the streets in a blanket of white that somehow made the neighborhood look less dangerous than it actually was. Vincent Moretti didn't do Christmas. He didn't do sentiment, warmth, or anything that reminded him he was supposed to be human. At 42, he had built an empire on fear, precision, and an iron will that had earned him the nickname the Reaper in the underground circles of New York. His black Mercedes glided through the empty streets at 2 in the morning. He had just left a meeting that had gone exactly as planned. A business associate who thought he could skim money from the family operations now understood the error of his ways. Vincent's hands were clean, literally. He never got them dirty anymore. That's what soldiers were for. But as he turned into a narrow alley that served as a shortcut to his penthouse in Manhattan, something made him hit the brakes. His driver, Marco, looked back confused. There, next to a dumpster overflowing with trash bags and discarded Christmas decorations, were two small figures huddled together. At first, Vincent thought they were dolls someone had thrown away. But then one of them moved. "Get out," Vincent ordered, his voice cold and flat. Marco hesitated. "Boss, we should just—" "I said get out." Both men stepped into the freezing night air. Vincent approached slowly, his expensive Italian shoes crunching in the snow. As he got closer, his breath caught in his throat for the first time in 20 years. Two little girls, no older than 5, were curled up together in a cardboard box. They wore matching pink pajamas that were far too thin for December in New York. Their faces were identical, pale as porcelain, with dark circles under their closed eyes. Twins. They were shivering even in their sleep, clutching each other desperately for warmth. Vincent's jaw tightened. He had seen terrible things in his life. He had ordered terrible things. But this was different. One of the girls stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were a striking amber color, wide with fear when they landed on Vincent's imposing figure. He was 6'3", broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black with a scar running down his left cheek. He knew what he looked like. A monster. The little girl didn't scream, though. She just stared at him with those enormous eyes and whispered in the smallest voice he had ever heard. "Are you going to hurt us?" The question hit him like a bullet to the chest. "No," he heard himself say, his voice softer than it had been in decades. "No, kid, I'm not." The other twin woke up then, immediately wrapping her arms around her sister protectively. They looked identical except for a small birthmark on the second girl's cheek. "What are your names?" Vincent asked, crouching down despite the snow soaking into his $1,000 pants. The first girl spoke again, her teeth chattering. "I'm Emma. This is Lily. We're waiting for Mama." Vincent's eyes scanned the alley. There was no one else there. "Where is your mama? She said she'd come back." Lily whispered, speaking for the first time. "She said to wait right here and not move." That was... "Emma, how many sleeps?" "3 sleeps," Emma answered, her voice breaking. "Maybe 4. I don't remember anymore." Vincent felt something crack inside his chest, something he thought had died a long time ago. 3 days. These children had been here for 3 days, in the freezing cold, waiting for a mother who clearly wasn't coming back. Marco stood behind him, visibly uncomfortable. The driver had 2 kids of his own. "Boss, we should call. We're taking them." Vincent cut him off, standing up abruptly. He looked down at the twins. "Can you walk?" Both girls nodded, but when they tried to stand, their legs buckled. They were weak from cold and hunger. Without a word, Vincent bent down and scooped both of them up, one in each arm. They weighed almost nothing. Emma and Lily froze in his arms, terrified but too exhausted to resist. Vincent carried them to the Mercedes and placed them gently in the back seat. He took off his cashmere coat and wrapped it around both of them. The coat was so big it covered them completely like a blanket. "Marco, heat on full blast. And stop at the first place that's open. I don't care if it's a gas station. Get food, water, warm clothes, whatever they need." "Boss," Marco said carefully, starting the engine, "what are we doing?" Vincent stared at the 2 tiny girls in his rearview mirror. They were still clutching each other, but now they were looking at him with something that wasn't quite fear anymore. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was confusion. He didn't know. What he did know was that something had shifted in that alley. The Reaper had found something worth protecting. "We're taking them home," he said simply, "and then we're finding out what happened to their mother." Vincent's penthouse on the Upper East Side had never seen children before. The place was all dark leather, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. It looked more like a fortress than a home, which was exactly what Vincent wanted. By 3 in the morning, Emma and Lily were sitting on his couch, wrapped in blankets Marco had grabbed from an all-night convenience store. They had devoured 2 sandwiches each and were now sipping hot chocolate with trembling hands. Vincent watched them from across the room, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. His phone buzzed. It was Tommy, his right-hand man and the closest thing he had to a friend. "You're not gonna believe what I found," Tommy said when Vincent answered. "The mother's name is Sarah Chun, 28 years old. She's been arrested 4 times in the last 2 years. Possession, solicitation, theft. Last known address was a shelter in the Bronx, but she got kicked out 3 weeks ago." Vincent's grip tightened on the phone. "Where is she now?" "That's the thing, boss. She's in the morgue. Overdosed 2 days ago in a shooting gallery in Harlem. Body was just identified this morning through fingerprints. No next of kin listed. No one even knows she had kids." Vincent closed his eyes. Those girls had been waiting for a ghost. "What about the father?" he asked quietly. "No father listed on the birth certificates. The twins were born at Mount Sinai 5 years ago. After that, Sarah bounced around the system. Child Services had a file on them but lost track when Sarah went off-grid 8 months ago. So nobody's looking for them. Nobody even knows they exist," Tommy confirmed. "Boss, what do you want me to do with this information?" Vincent looked at Emma and Lily. Emma had fallen asleep against her sister's shoulder, but Lily was still awake, staring at the Christmas tree Vincent's housekeeper had insisted on putting up. He never turned the lights on. But now, in the darkness, those colored bulbs were the only light in the room besides the city glow through the windows. "Nothing yet," Vincent said. "I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up and approached the couch slowly. Lily looked up at him with those amber eyes that seemed far too old for a 5-year-old. "Is Mama coming?" she whispered. Vincent had lied to countless people in his life. He had manipulated, deceived, and destroyed without a second thought. But looking at this little girl who had already been abandoned by the world, he couldn't bring himself to lie. He sat down carefully on the edge of the couch. "No, sweetheart. Your mama, she's not coming back." Lily didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, like part of her had already known. "Did we do something bad?" The question shattered him. "No," Vincent said firmly, his voice rough with emotion he hadn't felt in years. "You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing at all. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that have nothing to do with the kids. Your mama loved you, I'm sure of that. She couldn't fight her demons anymore. What's going to happen to us?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. Vincent looked at this tiny girl who had survived 3 nights in the freezing cold, who had protected her sister, who had somehow held on to hope despite everything. "You're staying here," he said. "With me. You're safe now." The next morning, Vincent woke up to a sound he had never heard in his penthouse before. Children's laughter. He walked into the living room to find Emma and Lily playing with the ornaments on the Christmas tree, carefully touching each glass ball like it was made of magic. His housekeeper, Rosa, a 60-year-old woman from Puerto Rico who had worked for him for 10 years and knew better than to ask questions, had somehow produced coloring books and crayons from somewhere. "Mr. Moretti," Rosa said quietly, pulling him aside. "Those angels need proper clothes, proper food, and probably a doctor. I made a list." Vincent took the list without looking at it. "Whatever they need. Money's not an issue." Rosa studied his face with the boldness of someone who had known him long enough to risk it. "You're really keeping them?" "I don't know what I'm doing, Rosa," Vincent admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. "But I can't just throw them back into the system. You know what happens to kids in the system." Rosa nodded slowly. "My grandson, he's a pediatrician at Presbyterian. Good man, discreet. I can call him." "Do it." Within 2 hours, Dr. Miguel Santos was examining both girls in Vincent's spare bedroom that had been hastily converted into something resembling a child's room. Vincent stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. They're malnourished, dehydrated, and Emma has the beginning stages of frostbite on her toes, Dr. Santos reported. Another night out there and we'd be having a very different conversation. You saved their lives, Mr. Moretti. Vincent said nothing. He didn't feel like a savior. He felt like a man who had spent 20 years building an empire of violence and was now completely out of his depth. Over the next few days, something strange happened in Vincent Moretti's life. The man who had built his reputation on fear and ruthlessness found himself shopping for princess dresses, learning how to make grilled cheese sandwiches the way Emma liked them with the crusts cut off, and reading bedtime stories about talking animals and brave little girls. His associates were confused. Tommy showed up on the third day and found Vincent sitting on the floor playing Tea Party with two 5-year-olds. "Boss," Tommy said slowly, "I need to talk to you about the Castellano situation." "Not now," Vincent replied, carefully holding a tiny plastic teacup. "I'm having tea with Princess Emma and Princess Lily." Tommy's jaw actually dropped. Vincent, the guy who once made a man disappear for looking at him wrong, was wearing a plastic tiara. But the real turning point came on New Year's Eve. Vincent had declined all his usual business obligations and stayed home with the girls. They were watching the ball drop on TV, Emma asleep in his lap and Lily curled up next to him, when she said something that changed everything. "Mr. Vincent," Lily whispered, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, kid. Are you going to leave us too?" Vincent felt like he'd been stabbed. He looked down at this little girl who had every reason to believe that everyone she loved would eventually abandon her. He thought about his own childhood, growing up with a father who valued power over everything else, who had taught him that emotions were weakness and love was a liability. He had spent his whole life believing that, until 3 tiny girls sleeping in trash had proven him wrong. "Listen to me," Vincent said, tilting Lily's chin up so she could see his eyes. "I know you don't have any reason to trust grown-ups right now. I know your world has been scary and unfair. But I'm going to make you a promise, and I don't break my promises. I'm not going anywhere. You and Emma, you're mine now. I'm going to protect you, feed you, clothe you, and make sure nothing bad ever happens to you again. You understand?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Can we call you Daddy?" Vincent's throat tightened. He had never wanted to be a father, had never even considered it. His life was too dangerous, too dark. But looking at these 2 girls who had somehow survived against impossible odds, who still had hope and laughter despite everything, "Yeah," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Yeah, you can call me Daddy." Lily threw her arms around his neck, and Emma woke up enough to join the hug. Vincent held both of them, these 2 tiny miracles who had wandered into his violent world and somehow made it better. If you're rooting for Vincent and these brave little girls, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next will show you that even the darkest hearts can find redemption. And this story is just getting started. The first 3 months were chaos. Vincent had faced down rival families, negotiated with corrupt politicians, and survived 2 assassination attempts, but nothing had prepared him for raising twin 5-year-olds. Emma had nightmares every night, waking up screaming that she was cold, that Mama was gone, that the bad men were coming. Vincent would sit with her for hours, holding her until she fell back asleep, his heart breaking every single time. Lily was quieter, more withdrawn. She hoarded food under her bed, terrified it would run out. She flinched at loud noises and wouldn't let Emma out of her sight for more than 5 minutes. Vincent hired a child psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Walsh, who came to the penthouse twice a week. "She's seen things no child should see," Dr. Walsh told him after the first month. "The trauma runs deep. But Mr. Moretti, what you're doing, the stability you're providing, it's exactly what they need. Just keep being consistent. Keep showing up." Vincent had never kept showing up for anyone in his life. But for Emma and Lily he did. He reduced his business operations, delegating more to Tommy and his other lieutenants. He started coming home for dinner every night. He learned to braid hair from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning. He attended every single parent-teacher conference at the private school he enrolled them in, ignoring the whispers from other parents who recognized his name and face. The other families in his world noticed the change. Some saw it as weakness. Others were simply confused. Vincent Moretti, the man who had built an empire on intimidation, was now showing up to recitals and baking cookies for school fundraisers. Then came the threat. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when Vincent got the call from the school. There had been an incident. 2 men had been spotted outside the playground during recess, taking pictures of Emma and Lily. Security had chased them off, but not before they'd gotten away. Vincent's blood turned to ice. He made it to the school in 12 minutes, breaking every traffic law in Manhattan. Emma and Lily were in the principal's office, scared but unharmed. The moment they saw him, they ran into his arms. "Daddy," Emma sobbed. "There were scary men watching us." Vincent held them tight, his mind already racing through every enemy he'd made, every rival who might see his daughters as leverage. Because that's what they were now. His daughters. Not just 2 kids he'd taken in. His family. That night, after the girls were asleep, Vincent called a meeting with his inner circle. Tommy, Marco, and 5 of his most trusted men gathered in his home office. "Whoever is targeting my daughters," Vincent said, his voice deadly calm, "I want them found. I want to know who they are, who they work for, and what they want. And I want it done quietly. The girls don't need to know how dangerous this world really is." "Boss," Tommy said carefully, "we think it might be the Volkov brothers. They've been trying to muscle into our territory for months. Word on the street is they see the girls as your weakness." Vincent's jaw clenched. Then they're about to learn they made the biggest mistake of their lives. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent waged a quiet war. He used every resource, every connection, every ounce of power he'd accumulated over 2 decades in the underworld. The Volkov brothers thought they could threaten his family. They were wrong. But Vincent did something different this time. Instead of violence, instead of the bloodshed that had defined his entire career, he destroyed them financially. He turned their allies against them. He exposed their operations to federal authorities through anonymous tips. He dismantled their empire piece by piece until they had nothing left but a one-way ticket back to Moscow and a very clear message: never come back. It was cleaner, smarter, and it meant Emma and Lily would never have to know their father had blood on his hands on their behalf. The threat neutralized, Vincent returned home one evening to find both girls waiting by the door, dressed in matching yellow dresses Rosa had bought them. "Daddy," Lily said excitedly, "we made you something at school." They each held out a drawing. Vincent took them carefully, his hands trembling slightly. Emma's showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun, labeled Daddy, Emma, and Lily. Lily's was similar but included the words "our family" in careful, crooked letters. Vincent had orchestrated million-dollar deals without flinching. He had stared down death without blinking. But these 2 pieces of construction paper with crayon drawings brought him to his knees. He pulled both girls into his arms. "I love you," he said, the words feeling foreign but right on his tongue. "I love you both so much." "We love you too, Daddy," they said in unison. And in that moment, Vincent Moretti realized something profound. He had spent his entire life building an empire of fear. But these 2 little girls had given him something far more powerful. A reason to be better. A year passed, then 2. Emma and Lily thrived in ways Vincent never imagined possible. The nightmares became less frequent. Lily stopped hoarding food. Emma's laughter, once rare and tentative, now filled the penthouse daily. Vincent transformed too. The man who had ruled through fear learned to lead with love. He officially adopted both girls on a rainy Tuesday in May, standing before a judge with tears in his eyes as Emma and Lily became Emma and Lily Moretti legally and forever. But the past has a way of catching up, even when you think you've outrun it. It happened on the girls' 8th birthday. Vincent had thrown them a party at the penthouse, inviting their entire class, hiring magicians and face painters, turning his once sterile home into a wonderland of balloons and cake. He was helping Emma open presents when Rosa approached him, her face pale. "Mr. Moretti, there's someone at the door. She says she's the girl's aunt." Vincent's blood ran cold. He stepped into the hallway to find a woman in her 30s, thin and worn, with the same amber eyes as Emma and Lily. She held legal documents in shaking hands. "My name is Michelle Chen," she said quietly. "Sarah was my sister. I've been in rehab for the past 2 years, getting clean. I didn't even know Sarah had died until last month. I didn't know about the girls until 3 days ago when I finally got access to her old records. I came as soon as I found out." Vincent's mind raced through every scenario, every legal loophole, every way to protect his daughters from being taken away. But Michelle surprised him. "I'm not here to take them," she said quickly, seeing the panic in his eyes. "I saw the adoption records. I saw that you've been caring for them. I needed to see that they were okay, that someone loved them the way Sarah couldn't." Vincent studied her carefully. She had the look of someone who had fought demons and won, barely. "Come in," he said finally. "Meet your nieces." The moment Emma and Lily saw Michelle, something flickered in their eyes. Recognition, maybe, from when they were very small. Michelle knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your Aunt Michelle," she said softly. "I knew your mama. And I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." Emma looked at Vincent, seeking permission and reassurance. Vincent nodded, his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, baby. She's family." Over the next few hours, Michelle told stories about Sarah before the drugs, before the darkness. She showed them pictures of their mother smiling, healthy, full of dreams. She filled in the missing pieces of their history without making excuses. When it was time to leave, Michelle hugged Vincent. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving them. For being what I couldn't be, what Sarah couldn't be." "You're welcome here anytime," Vincent said, meaning it. "They should know where they come from." Michelle smiled through her tears. "But they should also know where they're going. And that's with you. You're their father now. You're their home." 5 years later, on a crisp December morning, Vincent Moretti stood in the kitchen of his penthouse watching his 13-year-old daughters argue over who got to frost the Christmas cookies. Emma, now tall and confident with paint perpetually under her fingernails from her art classes, was insisting on creative freedom. Lily, organized and methodical, wanted them to match perfectly for the charity bake sale at school. "Daddy," Emma called out, "tell Lily that art doesn't have rules." "Daddy," Lily countered, "tell Emma that sometimes structure is good." Vincent smiled, sipping his coffee. "You're both right. Make half creative, half organized. Problem solved." The girls looked at each other and grinned. "That's actually smart," they said in unison, then laughed at their twin synchronicity. Gee, other women escape addiction. She brought presents and her infectious laugh. "Aunt Michelle," the girls shrieked, running to hug her. Later that afternoon, they all drove to the old Brooklyn neighborhood where Vincent had found Emma and Lily 8 years ago. It had been tradition for the past 3 years. They brought warm meals, blankets, and presents to the homeless shelter nearby, the girls insisting on giving back to people who reminded them where they came from. As Vincent watched his daughters hand out food and talk to families struggling through hard times, his heart swelled with pride. They had taken their pain and transformed it into compassion. They had survived the worst and become the best. That night, after Michelle left and the girls were in their rooms doing homework, Vincent sat alone looking at the city lights. On his desk was a framed photo from that first Christmas morning, Emma and Lily asleep on his couch wrapped in his coat, and next to it, a recent photo from Lily's School Honor Society induction and Emma's first art show. His phone buzzed one more time. A message from Emma. "Thanks for saving us, Daddy. Best life ever." Then from Lily what Emma said. "We love you infinity." Vincent typed back, "You saved me too. Love you both more than infinity." He had been the most feared man in New York once, built on violence and power. But 2 little girls sleeping in trash on Christmas Eve had given him something far greater. They had given him redemption. They had given him love. They had given him a purpose beyond himself. And that, Vincent thought as snow began to fall outside his window, was the greatest empire anyone could ever build. The end.